trips planned where he's gonna be gone for like periods of time. So we're trying to find somebody to replace for it. So hopefully soon.
He's like the peacock. He's stepped down. I was so shocked. I didn't even know he was playing.
Yeah.
Because I said to them, if you're leaving, you have to replace yourself. It's a hard ride. It's not easy to find.
It's hard, yeah. We've been looking, so we'll see. Hopefully pretty quickly here. Shakes up the loose. Something to do.
Anyway, even if they just have a
Yeah. Yeah. Just figure it out. He helps them through the process.
you know, like
Figure
for
out what they
example
need.
with Mark. Anyways,
That would be rough.
yeah. With him, I basically put him in. I was supposed to be like a chair, but I said, you know, he's going to take it out. Well, I would do rotation. And then I said, you know, because otherwise you're going to have to wait on results of the field.
Yeah.
I said, I've been the chair, so I know what I'm doing. But then, you know, the problem he has is he works, so he doesn't quite make all the meetings on time. But, you know, so they get started working it out. He comes in.
So keeps going. Okay. That's good.
Yeah, started.
That's good. That's good.
Ah, see what you missed by not being here on time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We can 10 minutes. You know, 10 minutes late.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. It's coming from somewhere, trying to make it.
And then I send him my notes. He's like, why do you do that? I said, I have to send them to Andrea,
Yeah.
the board meetings, and because then you know what I'm doing. And then if there's any changes, anything I say has to go to the board to have it unless she says, you can't say that. I see something I know.
To call the October 4th special city council meeting to order. Like herding cats.
It is. You got it.
Don't make me bang the banger. There we go. All right. So do a quick roll call. Carol?
Here.
Brian?
Here.
Greg? Norm?
Here.
And John's here. Let's stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Before we move into public comments, I want to thank everyone that's here today, that's giving up their Saturday morning for something I think the council and I personally believe is one of the most important organizations we have in this city. We're so fortunate to have the fire department that we have. It's led by an amazing group of professionals that truly care about our city, and I think that's the really unique thing about our fire department is that it's made up of folks that truly have a vested interest in La Habra Heights and keeping us safe. That passion and that focus on the safety of the city, especially in the current environment that we're in with the wildfire issue. I think there's a couple of objectives that we need to get through today. Really coming up with some meaningful ways to ensure that the fire department remains a viable entity into the future. We really haven't looked at the funding of the fire department post-COVID, and I want to make sure we understand why that's important is because really the the costs associated with operating the fire department have increased substantially post-COVID, giving the cost of things like having full-time paramedics. And I think having the full-time paramedics on staff are critical. And when I mean full-time, always having a paramedic, 2 paramedics on shift at any given time. I mean, that's really critical to us because it allows for those paramedics to do the life-saving things they need to do. And then just the general costs of running the department have increased substantially post-COVID. Rick, I saw the note you sent earlier. And by the way, while it's a city council meeting, we run these workshops pretty informally. So if you have questions or comments, you can raise your hand. The speaker cards are nice. Thank you for those of you that put them in. But anytime, just raise your hand and we'll call you up if you have a comment. Rick, you sent a note out, I think that had been forwarded to you by Brad or someone else about the cost of fire engines and possible collusion going on in that industry. I've read a couple of articles now about, literally over the last 2 years, the cost of fire apparatus, the specialty, the pumpers, the specialty equipment has doubled in the last couple of years. So we were fortunate to get ours when we got it. We were fortunate to get the funding that we have, but we can't count on that forever. And we do have certain things that need to get done, like the shed. We've got a $1 million+ now piece of equipment and several other $1 million+ pieces of equipment sitting in that building. We want to make sure that building can survive an earthquake, and so that equipment's available. We want to make sure that building is there to protect that investment. Let's face it, that pumper is an investment. It needs to last us, 10, maybe 20 years, and we want to make sure that it's properly protected. So that's kind of my opening comments. I'll open it up to the public. Like I said, you're free to make public comments now if you like, or you can, like I said, anytime during the conversation today, during the presentation, raise your hand and we'll take comments or questions. So I've got a couple of cards here. Mr. Edinger. Oh, of course. Mr. Brooks.
Good morning. Rick Brooks, Skyline Drive. I just want to start by saying thank you to City Council for taking your Saturday and City staff for taking your Saturday. I think this is a really important topic, and I do appreciate it. I know you're all volunteers. I think that maybe I'll just rip the Band-Aid off, and I think the real meaningful thing that we need to get out of this meeting and the future meetings is that the city can't afford to keep funding the fire department, and you're going to have to raise the taxes that we all pay on our property tax in order to continue to fund our own fire department. Personally, I don't like that, but I'm willing to pay it because the alternatives I like even less. And some of the city council members have heard me say the other way you can raise money is to take Harbor Boulevard and all the La Habra Heights properties on that and make them commercial and put commercial in there so that we get sales tax. We could widen Hacienda and take all the properties on Hacienda and turn those to commercial so that we get property tax, sales tax income from all those commercials. I don't really want to see strip malls all up and down Hacienda Boulevard, and I think that's going to change the whole dynamics of the city. So as expensive it is to be here, I think raising the tax is what it's going to take. Secondly, on weed abatement, a couple things I really wish the City Council would consider and discuss. First of all, when people there's still issues, I know, with people not complying with weed abatement. And sometimes things have to be more painful to do something than it is to not do it. I think that you should get with the city attorney, and anyone who's in violation of weed abatement should be issued a letter that says, if there's a wildfire and the fire spreads from your property onto the next person's property, because of gross negligence of you not doing your weed abatement, you can be held liable for your neighbor's property as well. Which means if I don't do my weed abatement and the fire spreads from my property onto the next one, not only does my house burn down and I lose everything in my house, but my neighbor can sue me and take all my money out of my bank account and attach my wages for the rest of my working life. And maybe that'll be enough for these people to take this seriously, to realize what's going on. This last year, watching the Altadena fire and the Palisades fire was horrific. I went through Altadena and it was horrible. 2 weeks ago, I was driving down the coast, decided to go through Malibu to see if it was as bad as what it was portrayed, and it was worse. To see the number of houses right on the ocean that were burned to the ground and torn down now. So my next thing is, in the event of a fire, evacuation. We need to seriously, as a city, look at our evacuation routes. We already have it in our fire code that when you build a new house, there's certain trees that are dangerous. Pine trees, cypress trees, eucalyptus trees. But yet, there's huge pine trees right at Caneta Sombre and Hacienda. Those things burn and cars are trying to go through there. You all saw in the Palisades fire where people abandoned their cars and cars were blocked in and people had to get out and leave on foot, which is so dangerous. But they had to take bulldozers to move cars out of the way, and their roads are wider than our roads. So not if, but when we have a fire, how are we going to evacuate? And if the trees are burning, I don't know if you guys have been near a tree when it burns, but I can tell you, I used to go to the desert on New Year's, and we'd all take our Christmas trees and stack them up about 8 feet high. And when those lit off, you couldn't be within 50 feet of the fire because it was so hot. So to have pine trees that are 30, 40 feet high right on our evacuation routes is ridiculous. To have cypress trees all along there. If you go watch what happens to cypress trees when they burn. It's an inferno for however many minutes. So if people are going to try to evacuate, they're going to have 100-foot flames they're going to have to drive next to, and what are they going to do? They're either going to drive by, in which case their tires catch on fire and their cars catch on fire, and that blocks the whole emergency access, or they stop and don't go through it. So I think that you should really seriously take a look. I know that you guys don't want to say remove all eucalyptus trees because there'll be a whole bunch of people that are going to complain. But what we should seriously look at is maybe say if you're going to have pine trees, if you're going to have eucalyptus trees, if you're going to have cypress trees, they can't be any taller than the distance from the road. Which means if they're 10 feet from the road, they can't be more than 10 feet high. If you have a 100-foot eucalyptus tree and it's 100 feet from your house and 100 feet from the road and you want to have it, you know, that's your problem. But to keep the evacuation route open, I think we seriously need to look at all of the roads and look at the trees that are along there. And I'm affected. I have a eucalyptus tree that's out by the road, and I would gladly cut it down if everybody else does their part. So anyway, those are the two things that I really wish that you would consider. Talk to the fire department and just tell people if you want to have those trees, you can't have them by the road or a private driveway. There's so many private driveways here, and maybe you have a neighbor who doesn't think about it or is just plain inconsiderate and has big pine trees right along a driveway where you're going to need to evacuate out of your driveway that's even more narrow, and there's the possibility of these pine trees burning. So anyway, please take a look at that for our evacuation routes, because look at Paradise. There's plenty of documentaries and videos about the Paradise fire that happened a few years ago and the number of people that died. And they died because of the trees and they couldn't evacuate. And once they got stuck, you know, it was a horrific death. And I don't want that to happen to our residents. So thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Matt, are you ready, or would you like some more time?
Yeah, I can do it now.
because we have some other hands if you want to.
As long as I can have your full attention.
Absolutely. I'm taking notes. That's why I'm trying to make sure I can keep track of all this stuff that gets said.
I wish I could speak like Rick. Just roll right off the tongue. Matthew Ettinger, 1428 Arosa Road, La Habra Heights, California. I'm a member of the Roads Committee. When I joined the Roads Committee, I was handed paperwork. The long-term mission of the Roads Committee is to assist the City Council in the formulation of strategies to maintain city roads in perpetuity. Objectives include reviewing various financing options for road maintenance, making recommendations as to the adequacy of the pavement management program and the plan for road maintenance, as well as educating the public about road maintenance needs and methods. We need a little bit more attention. You need to listen to the Roads Committee a little bit more. Let's talk about clearing and grubbing. Interesting. I didn't have any idea what that meant until the last meeting, and I looked at the cost for clearing and grubbing. The word and the meaning. Digging, rooting, working hard. The workers spent all day grubbing out the tree stump. And I want to talk about slough. There's another interesting word. I don't think I ever used that. Slough, noun and a verb. Casting off something undesirable. To discard or get rid of something undesirable. Soil slippage or grubbing on a slope. The hillsides are taking over the roadways. The fire department needs a little money. I have $108,736 we could have given them. Just like that, bango. They could have had the money if you all decided to spend it on the fire department. Not only that, the last road maintenance that we did, and that's for grubbing and clearing and grubbing that we have to pay for. I have another $80,000 we could have given you for clearing and grubbing in the previous job, Zone 3 and Zone 5. And it went bam, just like that. We gave it to the company that did our street maintenance. Why are we doing this? Bear with me. 4.5.30, part of the city, part of the ordinances. Every person who owns or is in possession of any property within the city of La Habra Heights shall, at their own expense, maintain their property, including any parkway areas between their property line and edge of pavement, any improvements or activities within those properties, so that they are free from any public nuisance. All property found to be in any condition that is described in this chapter shall be abated by rehabilitation, demolition, or repair pursuant to the procedures set forth in Article 8. The procedures for abatement shall not be exclusive and shall not in any manner limit or restrict the city from enforcing other city ordinance or abating public nuisances in any other manner provided by law. Yada, yada, yada. Grubbing, sloughing, that involves that part. Debris removal and damage to the roads. This goes on and on and on, and all it says is it's up to the residences to make our roadways safe. We are losing the roadways inch by inch every year, and then we get the company to come back and clear and grub for $108,000. Why are we paying this? This doesn't make sense. And it isn't where, it's when. Can you imagine 102 inches? Isn't a fire engine wide, 102 inches wide? Correct me if I'm not.
That's the maximum.
102 inches wide? Okay, so if we had a disaster and there was a fire and there was a home burning and we had to remove somebody in there that was burned, a fireman, let's just deal with the fireman. A fireman has to go to the hospital. You got an ambulance coming down the road and you got a fire engine 102 inches wide and there's 3, 4, 5 feet taken up by the slough coming off of somebody's property and they have to figure out how to get by each other. Doesn't make sense. Why isn't the homeowner? Why aren't we doing something about it? Let's start paying some more attention. Let the roads committee create a plan or help create a plan on how to get the people, the homeowner, to be more responsible. We need an advocate from the fire department. We need a liaison from the fire department to come to the roads committee meeting and let's work on this. Let's get it together. I feel like I'm just sitting on a committee going, oh, okay, let's do this and that project, and there's a crack in this road, and we'll take care of that. Give us a little bit more power. I want to thank you for your service, by the way, all the firemen. They work hard to take care of our city. I'm glad that we haven't had the problems the other cities have had. Thank you very much for being in attendance today.
Thank you, Matt. Anyone else like to make a statement before we start? Can you come up? Because that way we're recording this, so that way everyone can hear.
Also, thank you, council members and city staff for facilitating this meeting today. It's appreciated. My name is Vanessa Strada, 2212 Verazon Drive. I have a concern about some of the unmaintained property that Matrix owns. I think that's one of the biggest threats as far as wildfire in our community. Our street backs up to Matrix property. It was taken care of before by a gentleman who used to live in our community. He did a wonderful job. His name was Dave. He lived down on Encanada. And his crew used to do a wonderful job of maintaining and doing the weed abatement up there. And trees were alive, bushes were alive, and there weren't tumbleweeds, which there is an awful lot of now. And I know they've done some recent clearing of the trails, but there are 2 trails from El Empino that don't go up any further to the top trail where Verazon hits, that runs underneath Archfield, because the roads have been, the crevices have gotten so big, it's almost like a river that runs down them now. So it's almost impossible probably for a truck to get up there if there were a fire. And it's poorly landscaped. In the past, I don't think they're doing it now, but they would do the abatement of the weeds like tumbleweed, and they would go down into the canyon, creating a huge problem. So I think that is a big issue. And then the dead bushes along Hacienda. I'm not one for cutting all the trees in our community. They are beautiful, but I understand the concerns. But as we get rid of the trees on the hills, we have more sloughing, and the root systems are no longer there. And some of the Edison tree cutting has cut the heart of the tree, and so we have dead trees that then topple over. So I don't know what the proper answer is, but I think Matrix is something that we need to look at. And I appreciate that they're there and they're not a bunch of million-dollar homes up on the hills, but it is a concern that I think they need to be as accountable as we are as property owners. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Stephen. Oh, Mark.
Hi, Mark Hughes, Valle Drive. I'll keep it short. Instead of telling y'all issues, which many of which have already been noted, I'd just like to express gratitude to our fire department and city manager and city council. And as a member of Firewatch, instead of telling you guys what we want, I'd just like you to tell us what you want, what we can help you with. to maybe get things moving along. So if you need a hand with anything, we've got Kathy Sobel back here, and if any of you don't know about Fire Watch, we just try to look out and make sure the place doesn't burn down. And despite Bruce Thomas's help, we're pretty successful. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. All right, Stephen.
Stephen Blagden, Citron Road. Some things I mentioned might already be being done. If that's the case, excuse me. A tax increase shouldn't be accepted as a premise, because then you avoid or excuse looking for cost cuts and other revenue. The fire department used to be a profit center for the city, with hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in extra revenue. In fact, the fire department helped pay for the city buying this building. The fire department used to have a training academy in concert with local colleges. This not only provided a steady stream of volunteers, but the city get paid for it. Also, strike teams. It was one of the few cities where the fire department actually made a profit. And the city recruited volunteers from the colleges or trade schools for on-the-job training as firefighters. I think the city continues to do that, contact the schools to get paramedic and volunteer firefighters. There's Paramedic Training Institute in Santa Fe Springs. And the city could have its own EMT training school here. I did check with the regulatory agencies, and fire departments are allowed to have their own EMT, so that would be possibly an idea as a source for future EMTs and paramedics. Then, is the city still limiting the volunteers to, I think it's 640 or 960 hours to avoid future costs? I saw in the city write-up for this that there's recent paramedic legislation or responsibilities that has increased the cost of the city. I was wondering what that is. The general plan does have a surplus every year, surprisingly, even after paying for the fire department and the additional cost of the roads program. So that money does belong to the residents, so it should also be considered using that money to continue to help the fire department. Then when the fire department has a ALS call, I understand the paramedic goes along in the ambulance to the hospital, and often the fire engine goes along to bring them back. If that's still the case, the city should consider just sending the paramedics in the ambulance, and they can take a Lyft or Uber back to the city. That'll free up the $1 million fire engine and the staff that's on that. And then the apparatus bay, I saw plans for a new big one, and I don't think it's necessary to house all the equipment unless you can show that the savings and maintenance costs for the equipment is greater than the building cost and annual maintenance. In this climate, the shade cover that's out there now should be adequate for preserving most vehicles, and if they have a good paint job on them, that should last 20 years anyway. Matthew has mentioned the slough. That's required to be removed as part of the weed abatement and annual brush clearance. It's right on the legal notice. So that's something that, because that's one of my pet peeves too, is the slough on the road. And in fact, when the slough was being removed on Papaya, the road literally became like 8 feet wider in some areas. There was so much of it. Something that was more or less decided with the roads program is the city would do the slough removal for each project that was done, but then it would become the responsibility of the homeowners in the future years to take care of it. And I don't know that that's been done. And then since most of the calls are EMS, the city should consider getting something like a Ford Explorer-sized vehicle for EMS response, or even look at motorcycle paramedics, to both reduce the cost and increase the speed and efficiency and not be using $1 million fire engine for accompaniment. Also consider looking to LA County to maybe do a per-call response if the local cost gets too high. And then as far as reducing costs, when you look at the budget, there are items that say miscellaneous or something of that nature, but they could be $500,000 or $1 million. So it would be good to have that detail so you know if that's something that can be reduced or cut. I guess I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Anyone else?
Hi, folks. Thanks for having this meeting. Richard, on a Saturday, taking time out on a Saturday. Richard Beckman, Avocado Crest Road. I'm glad to see that Stephen talked about paramedics. Considering the age of everyone here, me especially, we need paramedics, especially need paramedics. Your website says that 90% of what the fire department does is to go to EMS calls. However, we've only spent 26.8% of the budget on paramedics, on EMS. However, for fires, we spend 60%, 59.47% on fires. Now, we list 92 fire calls a year, which on its own is about $14,000 per fire call. But the reality is, I heard from the chief, he very nicely responded back to a public records request. We've only had 3 fires in 2024. What that means is that we were spending $349,000, take 1.3, divide it by 3, right? We're spending 1.3 million on the fire department alone, just for firefighting, not for EMS, not for weed abatement. And we're spending $345,000 for every fire that we go on. Now, when we talk about LA County, there's a possibility that we could contract by hire for their resources, not a full contract where they take over everything, but assistance by hire is something they do regularly. The department I worked for got into an assistance by hire contract with LA County. The difference was we were renting out to them as opposed to them renting out to us. They make these, they have these contracts all the time. So we should be able to look at them and see if they can't, for $100,000, would you come put out our fire? We'll be saving $1 million a year. If we have 3 fires, pay them $100,000, we're spending 1.3. We'll save $1 million a year if we just contract by hire. Looking at LA County, I liked what Stephen said about the small truck. And if you take a look at LA County's model, most of the time, they have a paramedic squad. It's a pickup truck with all the paramedic gear. They send the 2 paramedics. It's a cheaper vehicle than the fire engine. They send the 2 paramedics on a call, follow up to the hospital, and that truck brings them back into the city when they're done with that call. Why we don't do that, I know why we don't do that. We had a chief that came from Fullerton, and that's how Fullerton does it. So he decided to put the paramedics on the engine company. I'm a little concerned, John, with the last 2 mayor's corners, where you said that we're talking about relatively new, stringent, unfunded mandates. Sorry about that. I hope we're not talking about paramedics, because we started having 24/7 paramedics in 1987, July 1st, 1997, I'm sorry, July 1st, 1997, we contracted with the city of La Habra at the time for 24/7, 365 paramedics. It was a 4-party agreement. If they didn't have paramedics available, they would rely on their mutual and automatic aid with Brea and Whittier, and sometimes Brea and LA County, and we would sometimes get those medics. But we had them 24/7 back in 97. 2004, December 9th of 2004, we canceled the agreement and decided to have our own paramedic program. Now, what I saw a couple of chiefs ago was that they didn't want to support paramedics. And so we saw many days, like we saw yesterday, where we didn't have any paramedics available. My number one concern at my age is paramedics. I don't care about fires. My house is fully sprinkled inside, great defensible space. I got fire protection. I got all those other things. My home is hardened. Let it burn. I worry about my grandchildren, my step-grandchildren, drowning in a pool, having a near-drowning episode where EMTs can't do anything. Paramedics can save their lives. Paramedics save lives. If they have laryngospasm, they need Versed. They need to be brought out of that. If I have a heart attack, I want paramedics to give me drugs. I don't want to see firefighters. I want to see paramedics treating me. So my consideration is, before we take a look at raising taxes, I think we need to look at how we're staffing our fire department. Thank you.
All right, any others? Kathy.
Well, I guess I'll just turn it. There we go. Kathy, Colban Road in La Habra Heights. I'm going to talk a little bit about funding. I know that, I'm working for the Habitat for the city to represent the Habitat. I represent the city for the Habitat Authority. And one thing that I have mentioned several times is about grants that the Habitat gets. Even though they have Measure PH, which is the tax base income, they're still looking at different kinds of way of funding using grants. One grant that I have mentioned to the city a few times is the Mountains and Rivers Conservancy grants. I know that they are willing to help out many cities. We do have roads that that the city has a responsibility for clearance. And I think that if you were to maybe go and approach them, you might find that they're willing to help out. They'll even come out and help out on what needs to be done. In some cases, they may even do the work. But reach out to them. If you're not sure what to do, talk to the people at Habitat Authority, because they obviously have had success. And after they've received the first grant, they've even come back and said, do you need more money? That's a rare thing to happen. But even if we do increase, let's say, in a tax base and such, we still need to be looking at other forms of funding. And I know that there are grants out there. That one I know, I'm pretty sure we would probably successfully see something. May not be exactly everything, but at least something to help out on offsetting the problem that we have with the funding. Just saying.
Thanks, Kathy. Anyone else? All right, Rafferty.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and everybody in attendance. We appreciate you, like you said, giving up your Saturday to be here with us to talk about something that's very important to the residents, community, and surrounding community as well. Our fire department, and looking at some of the funding that we have secured, how we operate, and some of the ways we place money and funding. Obviously, this is one meeting in a series of meetings that we're having, talking about various different operations of the city to look at as we budget, how we place those things in those budget dollars into budgets for different departments and different things, and being able to make sure that we are able to sustain ourselves for the future. Obviously, as things go and change, there's an ever-changing world out there. We need to be able to adapt and be able to move forward with that. So this is obviously a very important piece that we're going to be talking about. We've already held one related to roads, and some others coming up towards law enforcement and administration side of things, and we'll bring it all back together. But we have put together little PowerPoints. If we can, I think it would be good if we could go through the PowerPoint, and then we can continue some of the conversation related to how we operate, the things that we do to operate, how the funding works, where it comes comes from and how we spend those dollars and cents on the department, which ultimately are here to help the residents with their keeping the community safe. So I think we'll move into the PowerPoint at the moment. So let me get it keyed up and we're ready. All right, so you can see today, this is the first one for that one. We'll move into the next one. I'll hand it over to the chief. He'll kind of talk you through some of the department and other things that we do here at La Habra Heights Fire Department. So, Chief, I'll hand it over to you for a little bit, and I'll jump in later.
Thank you. I hope you don't mind if I stand up. I don't like to sit down. I'm not facing my. Sure. Can everybody hear me? Okay.
Just grab the mic so the video.
Okay.
When we do the video, a little
So I have to use this newfangled dangle stuff that I'm not used to.
you can take it out.
All right. First of all, thank you very much, and thank you for those comments. There's some things that before I start this slide presentation, I wanted to address. So first of all, I am so proud of this little city that we are in and the service that we provide. There are so many people out there, and I'm looking at a couple of them that are very generous to our little fire department. We wouldn't have been able to get by with a lot of the stuff that we needed. Mayor Papisa's they donated what Mr. Beckman said that we needed, a Lucas machine. Just let me briefly tell you what this machine does. It gives you compressions at 100%. If you have a person, a human being doing these compressions, they will not be at 100%. And that machine gets attached to you according to your weight and size, and it starts compressing your chest. So the standard now is 100 compressions per minute. That's what all the medical people have said is sustainability for a person to continue and survive if they have a heart attack. And Mr. Beckman is correct. That is my big concern, is how do we serve our residents that are now aging? I mean, look at the room. We're up there, and that's what I tell my young paramedics. I tell them, I said, think about when you go to the house of a person that's maybe 85 years old. They started having chest pain about 8 o'clock. And so during the night, they're going, oh God, I hope that pain goes away. I don't know what it is. I don't want to know what it is. So a young person doesn't get that. I get that. I don't want to go to the hospital and learn the awful truth that I might be dying. So I get them to change their mindset. So when they go out at 2:30, they're going to treat Judy or anybody in this room with kid gloves and understand why we're there. How can I help you? What is going on with you? And if you don't want to go to the hospital to find the truth, I'm going to try to convince you and tell you that the hospital is the best place for you because they have better equipment to take a look at your heart. But we've done everything that we can, training, eliciting funds, getting people to donate things to keep that paramedic program sustainable. I wanted to answer a question that has been at the forefront. Why don't we model ourselves after the county and have a squad? Well, I'm going to give you one real important reason why we don't do that. First of all those paramedics on the squad in the county are firefighters. They're firefighter paramedics. Of the 17 paramedics that I have with La Habra Heights, 14 of them are single function. That means they can't serve in the capacity as a firefighter. If they go to a fire, they can't be in the IDLH. That means the areas where the fire is. They can assist in little limited things like maybe getting the hose out, maybe attaching the water supply, but that's it. They cannot be involved in firefighting, so we're limited. Plus, LA County does not put a probationary firefighter on their squads as a paramedic. You have to go through almost the whole year of intensive didactic and intern paramedic training. And then after that, you'll come out and you'll get probably a probationary period. So probably the firefighters that are on the squads have at least 2 years experience before they get to go out on the squad. So now you've got a more mature, let's say, individual, and he's driving a fire apparatus. Because make no mistake about it, that's what that squad is. Am I right, Mr. Rickman?
Yes and
No, in that it does have a lot of paramedical equipment on it, but yes, that they respond to fires. Probably don't get used that much because if they do it like the LA City model, we have paramedics on our ambulances. Well, we have a Falk ambulance here, and I understand that we'd have to go through all kinds of hoops to try to change that, because I thought about that model, taking over the ambulance company, putting paramedics on that, and then deriving all the costs associated with transportation and treatment. And then we wouldn't have to worry about rolling a $1 million rig to the hospital. We do that because the paramedics that transport to St. Jude, Presbyterian, all those hospitals, depending on the time and what's going on in the community, they could be busy. So I'm going to throw a term out there for you. It's called wall time. And what that means is they get to the hospital with their patient and they have to wait till a bed becomes available. So that means my engine is out of service if I have to wait for them to get a bed, then come back before I put them in service. So it's all the reason we go to the hospital is so we can leave the unit that transported, that's EMTs, take our medics out, put them back on the engine. Now we're available and we're back in service. So that better serves, in my mind, my community, my residents that are my main concern. So we'll get through, there's probably all kinds of questions, but I just want to tell you there's a lot of things going on right now. The sustainability of this little fire department, and it's the biggest fire department in the country, and that everywhere I've gone as a captain on strike teams, I've been to Quincy, California. Anybody know where that's at? That's in the Plumas National Forest. That's on the border. Way up there, 2,700 residents, and we're sitting there waiting to get assigned a position in the fire. And a gentleman came up and he goes, I was in the Heights in 1984. And he's got this big beard and a hat, and I thought he was Paul Bunyan coming out of the forest. But we get that all the time. Wherever we're parked, somebody will invariably come up and talk about being at the Heights. Since I've been here, I've probably helped 200 or more go on to different departments, because just look at us like a AAA ball club, and we're preparing these young men and women to go to the big show, to go to the major leagues. And like parents, we love our kids, but we want to move them out the door when they're ready to go. But enough said about that. And the other thing that we're lacking right now is grants. We talk about grants, and I appreciate you. Yes, we will be looking into that. I'm looking at all kinds of different kind of sources for money, because that's the big thing right now. Everybody is hurting because we aren't getting access to the grants that we have in the past. Grants sustained this little department. PPEs, personal protective equipment, even the rigs, even the apparatus that we have, some of them could be purchased from grant money. But until I find, and I've been hitting that, getting a lotto ticket every week, hoping to hit one, and because I need $2.2 million to sustain this little fire department right now. So we'll talk about, let's get into the slide here. So there's our annual report. Next slide, here's our mission statement. It's pretty basic, all about trust and understanding, ownership. You be proud of your firefighters. I can't talk enough about them because they are very professional. They leave here, and Rafferty will tell you, the city manager's gone with me to a graduation with 3 or 4, as many as 4 of our firefighters in a major department, LA City. And the last 3 classes, your fire department has had a #1 candidate at that academy. These academies are huge. To have a firefighter from this small little department come out at the top of the class 3 times in a row, that says a lot about what they do and what they're committed to. And they're committed to the community. They take it with a lot of appreciation. Next slide, please. So that's just me. We have challenges coming ahead, and we're looking into all kinds of alternate sources of funding. Next slide, please. Major accomplishments, volunteer recruitment. So I heard talk about why don't we have the county? Well, I'll tell you what happened. So here's what goes on. Even though we're surrounded by the county, we don't have a truck company. And Mr. Beckman, with his experience, will tell you that a truck company is essential if you want to do ventilation and if you want to do other aspects. They carry tools, ladders that are going to get you on a roof, that are going to ventilate the roof so that the interior attack can do their work. We got on that house, and we'll have a picture coming up, and we didn't have a truck. First on scene captain, who was Captain Russo, our captain here, asked for a truck. And we're dispatched, and we talked to county on the radio. So the nearest truck that we are getting, because of the Area E arrangement, is a Santa Fe Springs truck. How long do you think that truck takes to get here?
15 minutes.
What's that? 15 minutes. How long would Quint 15 get to get here? Anybody know? 8 minutes. About 8 minutes. Big difference. Cut the time in half. Makes a big difference when you're trying to do work. Anyways, there's a little bit of confusion. LA County eventually did, but Santa Fe Springs was already here. They did dispatch a truck, but we didn't use them. In conversation with the county, if we did, as Mr. Beckman suggested, pay-per-call, everything is going up. So the arrangement they would have is we couldn't just arbitrarily tell them, send us a truck, and then if we use them, we'll pay you. That's not how that works. Every time we ask for the truck, we're going to have to pay them whether they go to work or not. And that's at a cost of $1,700 per call. So if you do the simple math, 10 calls, 17,000. How many fire calls do we have? So we have roughly, for automatic alarms, investigations, all that, it could amount to 100,000 a year if we get a contract with them to do that, which, you could say that's still sustainable, and we can look at that. We can look at that if we need a truck. What I've done with the recruiting and augmenting is we have every day in your little fire department 12 people on duty. So that offsets the 2 paramedics that are not firefighters. So we have 10 that are firefighters. I have a captain, I have a driver, and I have 8 firefighters. So 8 people, 10 people is a task force where I come from. That many boots in a house can do a lot of damage. Not damage, but do a lot of work. When I was with LA City, I was at a task force, and we would never want the captain to ask for help, because that means you're going to fill this little house up with all these firefighters. There's not that much for you to do. So I'm looking at getting ladders on our trucks, bigger ladders. We've got a 24-foot extension ladder, but that wouldn't service this building here. 35-foot extension ladder is what I'm looking at getting. So now I'm going to have enough firefighters on scene to do all the work that we need to do. That's where we're going with that. So we're going to talk about our fleet. We have right now the crown jewel, thanks to Senator Archuleta, a 2024 Pierce Type 1, a Sabre. That vehicle, when we first got the grant, was going for $685,000. In January of 2024, when we signed the purchase order, that vehicle now costs $880,000. And it was off the shelf, as they say. It was not a rig that was spec'd out. And the wait time was still almost 2 years. If you try to buy a new rig right now, and I heard somebody mention Fullerton, Brea, and some of the other close departments are suing the state, and they're going after these big companies because the prices have risen. So now that same engine that cost you $670 in 2022 is now $1.2 million in 2025 with the lead time of 4 years. Even if you have the money to buy it, you're not going to see it for 3 to 4 years. And they're saying, how can we keep the fire department going if you're going to do this to us? So they've been before the Attorney General and before the state of California in an argument as to why are there only so many builders and suppliers? Are they trying to monopolize the thing? But that's politics. I don't get into that much. So we have also a 2015 Rosenbauer. That's the workhorse of the fire department. That has seen almost every square inch of California: Redwood, Oroville, Placerville, South Lake Tahoe, and those are just the ones I went on. But a very, very good rig. It's a Type 3. It's a hybrid. It's a Type 1, Type 3, and the only difference is going to be in the size of the pump and the amount of water that it carries. So the Type 1 carries your KME right now about 500 gallons. This one that we bought, that 2001 West, that we're going to put on the Wish Garage list for sale, that holds 800 gallons. That's why we have it. So if you put 500, 800, and the Rosenbauer has close to 700, 650 gallons of water, you have 3 engines on scene. You're going to have a lot of water, enough to put a pretty good size 2,200 square foot house out if it's on fire. So we talk about the service life of our, and here's where I tell you, these kids do with what they have. Don't complain about it. You got a 2,000 excursion here. I don't know very many people that have a 2,000 excursion. That thing's 25 years old. It's not in bad shape. The seats, you know, we use it as a service vehicle to help us get supplies, whatever we need. But a replacement cost just for that. See, here's the problem. You go out and you buy a car, you're going to get certain things on it that you like, maybe a premium sound system, or you're going to get a security system in it, and that's it. When we purchase a vehicle, we have to worry about sirens, lights, and radios, and that's what adds to the cost. To replace that, you're looking at $100,000 to $250,000. I've even looked into leasing some of this stuff that we're going to need. Next slide, please. So here's our brush patrol. Still real good shape. Probably the hood and maybe the fenders need a little paint job, but it's that engine on it. It's got 173,000 miles on it. It's a Ford 450, I think, or 550. One of them is a 550. Still in great shape. We put, but it needs a new engine, and it needs other things. But to replace it, $200,000 very easily, and that's without radios. Next slide, please. So here's the one that the mayor doesn't like us to take out. But there's another stalwart engine. Look at that. That's a 2003. Needs a paint job, but it needs a lot of other things too. But these kids make it work. They make it work. They take care of it. They maintain it, and they keep it in working order. We do a lot of this stuff here, changing out parts when we can. This is our inspector's vehicle, 2008 Ford Edge. That needs to be replaced. You see a lot of the dents, a lot of wear and tear. It's been in and out of the shop, so that's where you're at. Do you pay $5,000 every time you take it to the shop just to keep it going for another 6 months, or do you try to look at replacing it altogether? Next slide, please. And these are, look at this, this is my favorite right here, that 2010 Chevy Silverado. That's the chief's vehicle, but it's a hybrid. Who knew that that was going to be a big issue? But I'm keeping it in service. It cost me the city, $3,500 total to get this battery, because the battery, they don't even make batteries for this thing anymore. We had to go back east and have them ship us out a hybrid battery. So we're hoping to get a couple of years out of that 2010 Chevy Silverado that's already 15 years old with 178,000 miles on it. The 2017 Chevy Silverado, that's going to be around for a while. Next slide, please. Ford Explorer. So as these things start aging, more and more things develop. So what do? Replace it or keep pouring money into it? You know, all these things can become a money pit. Next slide, please. Then now we talk about so here's why I'm so proud of these kids. Never complain about anything. I have them lining up to come work here because they can benefit from the experience that they get here. Look at the conditions. You can't really see it that well, but yeah, this was, how old is this? 2010, right? So yeah, we can do it, but everything costs money, so we need to replace. So if you notice the tile, we replaced the tile. It's different. We had some kind of little water leak there. You know, we're still in it. Nobody's complaining. I have bunk beds in there for the guys. No one complains about that either. As you can see, a small little workout room for them. We have 3 showers, 1 toilet, 1 urinal for 15 people per day almost. So it's kind of constricted, but here's the apparatus. So when you talk about what's happening here, so if you look, it doesn't have a low, one of the tires is not flattening out. That's how this thing, it's sinking. So we did a study, we had some people come out, and what's it gonna cost to replace that? Well, the foundation's what's gonna cost the most, because they're gonna have to sink caissons into the ground to hit bedrock and then work their way up. We're gonna get by having a shed built out. And yeah, you're right, somebody mentioned, we don't need anything elaborate, we just need to cover what we have. And we could take care of that on the outside by replacing some of the aging tents that we have out there to cover the apparatus. Just, it's been around a while. And so funding challenges. So a complete set, and I've had to stop hiring because I don't have any more turnouts to issue these firefighters that are coming. They're sharing a lot of stuff. And probably the only department that probably does that, but we rely heavy on grants to fund the personal protective equipment. So if you look here, everything is a cost. Helmets are $400. Fire hoods about $75. That mask alone is $300. Suspenders another $45. Turnout coat, anywhere between, depending on the vendor that you go in, we have 3. I always try to go with the one that's giving us the better deal. So anywhere between $2,700 to $3,200. Pants, the same thing. So total cost to replace everything is $4,000. We usually get, we got a recent grant from Firehouse Subs, but they only were able to give us enough to have 10. The problem with our turnouts is, guess what? Somebody decided, hey, how can I make more money as a manufacturer of these turnout coats? And how do you think I could do that? Put an expiration date on it, right? If I told you this chair is expired, you got to get a new one. You're going to look at me like I'm crazy, right? What's wrong with that chair? So we have our stuff, the Cal OSHA, the NFPA, all these governing bodies got together and said, yes, the lifespan for a set of turnouts is 10 years. If you go outside of that and allow them to use that, if something happens to them, then we're really on the hook for, it's a liability issue. So we're looking for, we don't have, the grants have been shut down to us. We had 3 in the works, and we're nowhere with those. And this administration, I don't know if that's going to change in the next 3 years or so. Yes?
Chief, why aren't we renting turnouts? Every academy in California rents turnouts.
Looked into that. Trust me, your chief doesn't just show up. I've been looking at how do we lease vehicles? How do we buy used vehicles? Well, I looked into, there is a company back east that will rent them.
Santa Fe Springs Firefighter Safety Center, Redline in San Diego, there's like 12 different rental companies.
Sure.
And the last quote I got, $800 a year per set. So they can rent them.
Right, right. And the good thing about it is that every 2 years you turn, you turn them in and get another new set. So it's, it's a good deal. I've been looking into that.
They fix it, they clean them.
That's right. They maintain them.
Hold on. Simple math tells you that's not a good deal. Okay? Right now it's a 10-year lifespan. $4,000 is $400 a year, so you're paying double what it costs you to do it that way. So I would make an argument on that. But go ahead, keep going. I don't want to interrupt.
No, and see, everything has to be taken into consideration. How do I get that if I don't have the money? So a source is to rent or lease.
Well, that's budgeting. That's
Right. But I mean, it's something that we're talking about nonetheless. All right, next slide, please. Thank you. Uniforms. Right now, when I go to 4 major fire academies, Mount Sac, Rio Hondo, El Camino, and Santa Ana. And as these young men and women are coming out of the academy, we recruit them and have them come work for us. I'm having to ask them, do you have your own turnouts? Do you have your own uniform? Because the cost is prohibitive with the turnover that we have. And then, of course, it's unprofessional to have a young man or woman show up to your house with a torn shirt. So rather than to have that happen, we're going to limit the hiring for temporarily till we get back. But there's your cost. A full Olympics uniform costs over $500. That doesn't include the boots. The boots are anywhere, whatever vendor you use, anywhere between $125 to $300 for these firefighting boots. And the badge is another issue. Hang on, Mark. The badge is another issue. We have gone to, and each badge like this costs $279 each, and we don't have enough badges anymore. So they're sharing a badge. So one firefighter will leave today, and he'll leave his badge for the firefighter to use it tomorrow, because I can't afford to buy 20 badges, so on and so forth, stuff that we're doing. All right, so here's the fire that we had on recently. And I'll tell you, as bad as this looks, it could have been worse. The resident, when I did the report and was talking to him, he was having trouble with this youngest, putting her to bed. So he's trying to get her to bed. Finally, at about 1 o'clock, gets her to bed, comes into the living room, and he smells smoke. Wow. Looks around the kitchen, the house, doesn't see anything. Well, he comes out of the front of his house, and I don't know if we have a picture, but the front of the house, you can go back there. This is the garage. So his house sits back there, and he came out. His garage was completely involved. And what happened is the garage had you can see it a little bit here. Back here is the attic. So it was full-blown, fully involved garage already, and it got into the attic, and that's what the smoke he was smelling back there. So who knows how long this was burning, but if you look at the char, it was burning for quite a while. We got on scene, we had a water supply right in front of his driveway, and we had enough manpower to where we quickly surrounded it with 2 hose lines, and we were able to keep it and contain it to just that house. There are other houses that are pretty close. They're called exposures, and we kept it from going anywhere. We kept it just to this house. But that's what your fire department does. They do a good job with what we have. So recently, I went to California Fire, Cal OES Symposium, dealing with defensible space and home hardening. So there'll be some workshops in the future that I'll have so we can talk about that. You have a mandate coming, quickly approaching. It's going to start effective January of 2026. And it's going to address zero zone, zone zero. In other words, you're going to have your house and you're going to have to provide 5-foot clearance around your entire house. No mulch, no plants, no rose bushes, nothing. And that's not something we're imposing. The state is going to make that a requirement. It's going to go, I think it'll be effective full force by 2029. But you're going to see some literature coming out, and I'd like to present a little workshop just on that to help you understand what's coming and the Senate bills that are affecting it. So here we are, the federal and state mandates, so we have to have minimum staffing requirements. So like I said, you can't include the 2 medics because most of them are single function. That means they cannot fight fire. So on the engine, I have 6, and that's minimum staffing. 2 paramedics on duty to provide advanced life support, which is what we want. Paramedic training and continuing education, as you talk about costs, everything is going up. Our medical supplies alone have seen what, Angie? What do you think? About 25% increase, 30% increase? So, a lot of money when you don't have it. So we have, recently we acquired our medical director retired, and now we have another medical director. There was a little bit of a hiccup in how he was going to come in, but we got that straightened out. So the state mandates certain things. One of them is inspections and brush clearance. So we talked about sustainability, and here we are. Here's our fire tax, and here are our expenditures. So for the last 10 years, we've been doing that classic robbing Peter to pay Paul. So we've been taking more and more money out of our general fund, and that's not sustainable. So we have to find a way to make it an even playing. So we're not taking that money. Where do we do it? We have to look for other sources. And yes, okay, fire tax is one, but if there's something else that we can get into, then we're going to be looking at that too. And these are the numbers. Just to give you an idea, in 2015, we only took 91,000 from the general fund. Fast forward 10 years, we're taking over 600,000 from the general fund to sustain the fire department. All right, well, that's my workshop. Go ahead, Mark.
I wanted to be clear. We're asking these firefighters to work for us, and then we're also asking them to provide their own PPE.
Well, just temporarily until I can find, can we rent them? Right. Is there another grant that I haven't looked at that is going to give me the money to go out and buy them? So that's a temporary fix.
And that's something that we could fix with an increase in our fire assessments?
That's something we'll have to look at. Excuse me.
I'm sorry we're so damn cheap. You guys deserve better.
That's why I said that's why I'm proud of these young men and women that come to work for us. They do it for free anyways, and they don't complain. So if you're going to be proud of somebody, be proud of those kids that come here and work for you. And work hard too, and want to make you proud. The next time we have a graduation and we have a young man or woman, I'd invite you to go see it. It's a very beautiful thing to watch one of your own go up front there and receive these awards. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I had a suggestion. I know we only pay $45 a year for the paramedic program, which is so maybe that could be doubled to $90 because that's still a good deal per household. I don't know. Maybe that's a suggestion, $90 instead of $45. I know there is grants for some families. The other thing is the new mandate by the governor. That doesn't seem like a lot of time for people to prepare their homes 5 feet, and we haven't seen anything. I heard about it, I think, through Norm. Otherwise, we haven't heard about that. And
That's why I've been proactive in going to these things so I can bring that information to you way before.
but that's something we should be hearing from, yeah. And 5 feet is a lot of work to do before January for some of our homes that are very, maybe.
I'm not saying that I think you're going to see literature coming out. You're going to see literature coming out January.
Oh.
And then I think it'll be in full effect and enforced by no later than 2029.
Does that include succulents and gravel? Or do we know?
Yes. Gravel is okay, but the mulch that a lot of people put to dress up the front of the house.
Are there going to be any plants that are allowed, or is this going to look like a
you'd have to look at
desert
the list.
landscape everywhere?
I'll give you access to that
Okay.
list. There's a
Okay.
whole list of things.
Thank you.
I think you were next, or go ahead, bud.
Okay. Who's inspecting this in 29? Is it you, and are you getting reimbursed by the state?
I didn't hear the question.
All right. This apparently starts in 2029. And
Senate
who's,
Bill 731.
thank you. Who is inspecting? Is it the local fire department?
This is what having a robust fire department is going to come into play. So now I'm going to train my firefighters to be what we call assessors. So they're going to come up to your property and they're going to say, sir, here's where you can start working. That way you'll pass inspection.
Are you getting reimbursed for this new duty by the state, a mandated cost reimbursement?
No.
No.
I think on that last slide where you showed the general plan subsidy, it went from, it was 100-something 3 years back, and then it went to like 630 or 680, and then 603. Why those big jumps, and were those just one-offs, or are they going to continue?
So if you look at the cost, so we had the KME. Now remember, we purchased the new Pierce in 2024. But we had to keep the KME, which is the 2008 fire engine, running. Well, we used to take a poll, how long we were going to have that thing in service. It was constantly going to the shops. It's one of those things that I tell you, you want to buy something new, or do you want to keep putting money into the older one? Well, we had no choice. We had to keep it in front line because we didn't have anything else.
Pardon me for a minute, Chief, if I could.
Some of it.
Let me interrupt for just a second. Rafferty and I went over this on Thursday to try to answer Stephen's question. The answer is the SAFER funds no longer come. That was augmenting dramatically. Those were federal grant funds for volunteer fire departments. They were adding, I don't know, Rafferty, what was it, like 300 grand a year, thereabouts on average? So part of it's what the chief's saying. It's the actual cost increases that we're not being recompensated for. But the loss of grants, which were an integral part of those numbers, is what's done the big numbers. That's truly the large numbers.
So probably repeat.
Some of that is grant money that's lost in the mix. Some of it also too is we had a few years where there was a lot of fires burning. So we had a lot of strike team deployment. So obviously the state pays for equipment and vehicles to be out at those strike teams. So we were able to recoup some costs, which offset some of those years. There was there was one year where we were just sending relief crews every 2 weeks, a whole new group of guys. We'd drive them or fly them up north. They would change out and kind of go through a rotation. So a couple of those years in there, there's a pretty healthy amount of money that came back in from having the equipment out at fires and those things. So there was some cost savings that comes in there. There was also other grant funds, SHISHCAP and SAFER and other ones that were out there. We were able to make some money off of those and recoup those grants. They're just not as available at the moment. That's kind of the way it's, unfortunately, where we are today for that in those aspects of it. But it includes other sources of grants. So some years there's more brush clearance, like liens that come in. So work that gets done, properties get abated, get cleaned, through all of those various aspects. So it's a combination of generals and revenues, which Angie can touch on a little bit there for you as well.
Sure. Also, I want to add, excuse me, we did use ARPA funding to pay for the paramedic salaries, software, other things that I was able to use towards the fire department. And I want to say back in 2019 or 18, prior to that, we were paying paramedics minimum wage. And since then, we increased it so they could at least make $20. I mean, they're a little over $20 now, but that adds up. So it's just little things like that. Grants that we can't really depend on. We're constantly looking for grants for anything, turnouts, safety equipment, anything you can possibly think of. But even if we apply for something, doesn't mean it gets awarded to us. Or if it gets awarded to us, it's not immediately. It takes years. So we are being proactive with funding, finding money, and we are very, very conservative in our spending. So I just want to make that clear. We're not just throwing money out and buying like top of the line stuff. We're super cheap here just to make it work so we can afford to have a fire department.
And we've explored some options in the past to kind of go back to like paramedics and moving over to the county. Through the COVID year, especially early COVID times, finding paramedics became extremely difficult because all the hospitals became restricted. All of the students that were going through paramedic school, there's classroom component, but there's also the practical. They have to be in the hospitals, and it became extremely difficult for those paramedic students to be able to do the practical side in the hospital aspect of it. So there was just kind of this blockade of time where there wasn't paramedics graduating through the system because it kind of got stuck. And we were down to at one point like 4 paramedics. We were really down and low and having a hard time. We did try to work with the county at that time to look at supplementing with a squad out of the county to pay for a squad. So a squad, when we talk fire department terms, not everybody talks fire department terms, so quints and squad. The squad is basically It's 2 paramedics that drive around in the truck. It looks like a pickup truck with the box on the back of it. That's what you'll call a squad. And if you have a pulse point, you'll see on there, it'll say like S. A lot of times you'll see it comes out of 191s or 192s. Most of the time, if it comes up into the Heights, which is just down on the La Habra side, it'll say S191 or S192. That's the 2 paramedics in their vehicle that are stationed at station 191, 192s that come up into the Heights. So it's that. We looked at can we pay for a squad to come in? And during those COVID times, it was just hard all the way across the board. County really wasn't interested in or had the extra staffing, the ability to be able to come in and have a squad for us. That's when we looked at other options and ways to try to build back our paramedic ranks. Like Angie said, we were minimum wage for paramedics. We increased the paramedic pay through ARPA funding. So ARPA funding was the COVID money. Everybody talks about those COVID monies. That was ARPA. ARPA was the COVID monies. We put together a tuition reimbursement program for the paramedics to try to entice some paramedics to come in. And we also looked at single function. That's before we had always been a dual function, a medic firefighter. They became very hard to have them here. And if they did, boom, they would go to the county, they would go to the LA City, like they would work a shift and they would be gone because they were picking them up like crazy, especially through those like COVID years for it. So we put together a tuition reimbursement program to help them. These paramedics, they spend their own money to go through this paramedic program to get their paramedic license. It's not inexpensive. It's expensive. It's a lot of work, time, and dedication for those paramedics to be able to complete that component of it. So we put together, using ARPA funds, to tuition reimbursement programs. They work so many shifts every month, they would get a payment and to help them offset the cost of their tuitions, which is one of those things that we were trying to do to build our ranks of paramedics and get back to it. We also moved, that's when we said we moved at that time to allowing single function medics because we needed paramedics. It's one of the, we're all kind of talked about here. One thing we do a lot of, we run a lot of medical calls. Majority of the calls fire department runs here, medical calls. So that's why we moved into allowing the single function medics, because they can come and they may stay a little bit longer, but even then, our paramedics, they move through here really quickly. A lot of them, they come in, there's medics, they see the fire department, they go through the school. And you see, Ms. Beckman over there has probably seen some of our paramedics go through those academies, and they get picked up and then move on to larger departments and full-time careers where they can be full-time, get all those benefits and things that they're looking for to sustain their family and grow their careers and things like that. So, like I said, right now we have one paramedic. We have one full-time paid paramedic that we have. All the rest of our paramedics are part-time paramedics. Some of them, like I said, they come and go pretty quickly. When we look at, I know the mayor is very interested in us having, like, setting up to be more of a squad type of a department. We've looked at, spec'd out the cost to purchase a squad vehicle for them and look at how can we get that vehicle purchased, how can we do it, but it's also the aspect of you're going to put two people that are probably relatively new into the program out treating a patient, going to the hospital, coming in and coming back all on their own, unsupervised, without that knowledge of a captain, experienced person there, where you kind of see it, like as Chief was talking about, LA City, LA County, they're usually a couple of years into the program before they're in the squad and they're out there on the public on their own. Granted, here it's not easy to get around town, and we have new staff that start here. Sometimes you look at Avocado Crest and see, ooh, Avocado Crest, instantly think East Avocado Crest, but sometimes there's stuff on West Avocado Crest. It's one of those things where it's like a good knowledge base and some experience with the city to just get around. Getting around here at night, most of you all know driving here at night is very different than driving during the day. Even myself, who's very familiar with the streets, I can drive past something I'm trying to look at night because you sort of lose those landmarks where you know where you are in relation to different aspects. So having somebody who's here and experienced is another component of looking at that. If it's something, if we wanted to move more towards a squad, we would probably need more seasoned full-time medics that are here for a long time, that you can have the confidence that can go out, run that call, treat the patients, get the patients to the hospital, and get back to quarters to be available as fast as possible with, like, hey, I'm coming back from St. Jude's, maybe I'll stop off and get a hamburger or go get a milkshake or something like that, instead of coming right back into quarters as fast as possible to make sure it's available. So those are some of the things we have been looking at, that aspect. Continue to explore and look at those things. Like we're talking about the Quince. Quince is the ladder truck. So you see like the big fire truck and the guy in the back with the tiller, that's a Quince or a truck. I could tell you when I was leaving the last city to come here, my city was purchasing that. At that time, that was 2016, that was $1 million. And you look at now, just the regular standard Type 1 engine is like $1.2 million. So in that like 10 years of time, it was a ladder truck. A big, expensive piece of equipment was $1 million they were paying for that ladder truck. Now you're paying more than that for an off-the-shelf Type 1 fire engine, not even customized to meet the unique needs of a city or a department. It's kind of interesting to see how fast those things have come up, and the wait times for equipment. Equipment is a long lead time for equipment today, which is hard when you have stuff that needs to be replaced.
Yeah, thanks, Raf.
Richard mentioned, and it was in the write-up for the meeting, about the recent paramedic regulations that have increased costs. I was just wondering what the regulation is and what the increased cost is.
Yeah, so maybe a poor choice of words in the note, but really it's what Rafferty's already talked about, right? So post-COVID, the cost of just having paramedics here has gone up quite a bit. Carol?
I think Brian might be able to help on this. I know when I was on the council back in the 90s, we didn't even have paramedics in the city. And then Richard mentioned about we contracted with La Habra. Now Brian will know about this. We had some side of sweet deal where they were hardly charging us anything. And then they finally woke up, right? And then now the law has changed where you also have told me that Orange County only requires one paramedic, but LA County requires 2, right?
They're different, and the chief can talk to that a bit. We do Area E, so we team up with Area E. So we're part of LA County, so we have to comply with LA County rules. And I know Ventura County and Orange County, a little bit differences on their models and things, and maybe you can speak to that. But talking about the paramedics, like Carol first said, that way back when we were actually almost been given the service from La Habra, and they all of a sudden woke up and they said the cost, I think, was, I don't know, between $10,000 and $15,000 they're charging us or something back in the 90s, and they all of a sudden it went to over $100,000. And so that at that time we decided to develop our own paramedic program because of the response times and everything. Because relying on Orange County at the time, you had increased response times, and they were going to charge us that kind of money. So then we started into that. And actually, over the years, we've really never, funded the paramedic program per se. We just rolled it into the existing fire fee and everything and absorbed the costs. And the paramedic fees have gone up tremendously over the years. And back during COVID, it was really bad. It was, they like Rafferty was talking about, they just weren't producing the students out of the schools and things, and paramedics were at a really it was hard to hire any paramedics at that time. And we had to, I worked with the chief, I forget his name now, but LA County, because we were really desperate up here, and we had to make sure we had the coverage. So we got backed up with LA County because they were putting pressure on La Habra Heights that we didn't have proper paramedic service. And it was really tough at that time. And we got support from LA County at that time, so we got through that period. And then at that time, we brought it back to the council, and we increased the paramedic fee considerably for what we were going to pay. And we just discussed doing the tuition reimbursement program, which we did. So if they went to the school, we would reimburse them, and we still do that. So the costs have gone up just tremendously. So it's comparing, like Stephen was talking about the general fund and what we're taking out of there. And yes, it's a huge amount because we had some of that COVID money at the time. I believe it was $1.5 million out of the federal government that was allocated to our city, and we had to fund certain things with it. And a lot of that money was funneled into the paramedic program to pay for that. Well, eventually all that went away. So how do you fill all those stop gaps? And having 2 ALS paramedics on duty and the increased pay and the tuition reimbursement and all that. So we're in the perfect storm right now, and that's where all the money's going. But they've done a really good job with this over the years, and we've maintained our fire department and kept the city safe. So now we need to look at this thing holistically for the next, in perpetuity for our city, and realize that, hey, we have to generate enough money to properly fund the fire department.
So real quick, talking about the paramedic program, so now I was asked, how can we get paramedics? We were on maybe, like the city manager said, we might have had 4 or 5 medics for the whole city. And you're supposed to have 2 per day. When I first got here, we had a platoon system. That's how many paramedics we had. We had 4 paramedics for every day of the week. So they would work an A and B. So one week on a Monday, you'd work the A. The next week, the B would work. We had that many medics, and we were only paying them minimum wage. Well, big explosion for paramedics came. And honestly speaking, I was asked, what can we do? And I brought them a flyer. And I said, Premier Ambulance is advertising on billboards all over the neighborhood. They're going to pay starting paramedics $32 to $36 an hour. We can't pay that. We can't afford to pay that. So we brought our pay up a little bit. And the kids come here out of paramedic school. They're not getting hired by a major department right away, so they get some experience under their belt, and then they go. It costs a major city approximately $100,000 to send their people to paramedic school. It's a whole year of clinical, didactic, and internship. Then you do a ride-along and you get certified. So it's $100,000. If I send somebody to Montebello, guess what? Chief Pilot doesn't have to pay that $100,000. He got a paramedic that he could put on his roster right away and put him to work. So that's how we came to increasing that, and we're nowhere near what the minimum standard is out there for paramedics. Go ahead, sir.
So, Chief, during your presentation, you mentioned about the Lucas machine. I'm not sure everybody understands what that is, but it's a CPR machine that does mechanical CPR. That machine was donated by the La Habra Heights Improvement Association. And the Improvement Association raised the funds, as well as another charity, which is Los Compadres in this city. And we raised the $32,000 or $34,000 that it took to fund that for the department. I was part of the Improvement Association and an integral part of that whole transaction. And in that, you mentioned, you showed the living quarters. Well, I know that there's been other things. There's been mattresses donated. There's been TVs. I know we've donated pots and pans, which seems simple, but everything adds up. And it was requested, which I never saw, to say, give us a punch list. Say, here's the items that we need. Here's how much I think it's going to cost. And the La Habra Heights Improvement Association is willing to reach out to the community and get donations so that we can support the fire department. The La Habra Heights Improvement Association is an independent 501c3, meaning that it's a charity, and if you donate to them, it's a tax write-off. And they can donate a lot of items that the fire department needs. So I would hope that you might look at that avenue to help support some of the minor things. I don't think we could take on the project of putting the new building up, although I'd like to, but a lot of the little things to get floors replaced or countertops and new microwaves, you know, things like that. I know there's a lot of people in the community that would like to support the fire department. So anyway, I just wanted to make that statement to the community.
If I didn't make it clear, I wanted to say that I was very appreciative of all these people that are generous, and like the improvement organization, the one that you're involved in that gave us the Lucas machine. Without your help, to give us simple things like chairs. I came in and we had these chairs that we had for maybe 10 years. And when you have a chair that someone sits in 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, they don't last that long. You know, you might have a chair at your house that you've had for maybe 20 years. Well, I guarantee you somebody's not sitting in it all the time. So we've had donation of chairs. We had donation of pots. Monica's always very, very forthright with that. What do you guys need? What do you know, our wish. Yeah, and she has a list. We do have a list. You know, and we try to be, if I could ask for everything I'd like, you know, it's not doable. We try to just give her the bare. It's like that movie. Who's seen It's a Wonderful Life? Mm-hmm. In that movie, the Great Depression is coming on, and you know Peter Bailey has to give his money to the bank, that building savings and loan, to keep it going, right? Well, we're that little lady that he says, how much do you need to keep you going? And she comes up, she goes, $11.37. And he says, bless you, and kisses her, because she's not asking for everything in her account. She's just asking for what she needs, and that's what we do. We don't ask any of you for more than what could sustain us. But I've got 12 guys working every day. So a pot that might last you 5 years is only going to last them 6 months, maybe a year. So we've got a lot of things that we need to work on, and we do have a list that we put out there, but we don't put everything on that list. Like you said, new brush patrol, no, I know we're not going to put it.
All right, we're coming up on noon, so I do want to. Sorry, Chief, I do want to kind of get to some closing comments and.
Fundraisers, years ago, we would have pancake breakfast, and then we'd have fun days. And now, granted, that's not going to bring in a ton of money, but it's something if you need to buy a new chair, or you need new pots and pans, or you need a new life-saving piece of equipment. One year when we needed the jaws of like Margaret Bear and Nene Scott, Nene's mom, Carol Scott, got together and they generated enough money to buy the jaws of life, which at that time was $5,000.
Yeah.
So we can do those things for those little things.
We're on that. We're working that route too. Yes, sir.
Have we put out a proposal saying what this would cost for another agency to perform the same services for us to compare costs?
Yes.
And then also the difference is $1 million between what general fund and, fire tax and expenditures. Are you asking us to make up that difference? And what is the cost going to be on that per citizen or per resident?
Yeah.
Right. Let Rafferty, can you talk about
I can talk to that. That's some of it. I mean, obviously, what you see on there is the fire tax. So that's directly comes from when people are paying your property taxes and making an investment that comes directly out of the community into it. There are other sources of revenue that the city has that comes in the door that makes up some of those ones. So, Christine, if you click to the next slide, so you can kind of see there. So it varies. You know, some of that stuff is related to grants that are out there that can offset the cost of equipment and things. A lot of times it's hard to pay for staffing with grants and things like that. We're starting to see some other communities and cities that are now in a little more financial troubles and tough times because they were using like the COVID money to just pay staffing costs or hire additional staffing. And now all that money is gone and it's hard to replace that funding. There's nothing out there right now that can replace those fundings. But that's where we kind of look at, like, you can kind of see over time, it varies as things go along. This is whole part of this process to look at not just the fire department, but, you know, what it costs for roads and sheriffs and staffing, just regular administrative staff, and look at, like, what are those costs? Where are those dollars and cents that come in the door through taxes, property taxes, special taxes, sales tax, and other revenue sources we have, and how we place those monies into the departments and function for those things, and trying to figure out how we can make sure we can sustain ourselves moving forward. It's, you know, costs over the last few years. We heard from Mr. Edinger here. He's on the Roads Advisory Committee. Projects a long time ago when we first started our street assessment district, they were in the $800,000 for construction. Now we're in the $1.5 million for construction, as the average of things have really increased over those past few years. So that's part of what the council is looking at, why we're doing a series of workshops, so we can look at not just the fire, but sheriffs and roads and other infrastructure, and look at what those costs are, how we spend our dollars and cents, and find a way to look at. This may be the additional funding we need to make sure that we can continue into the future as La Habra Heights, or is this, you know, sadly, some other city manager meetings I go to, sometimes they ask me, like, when are you guys going to fold it in and go back to the county because you can't afford to provide services and things like that. And, you know, we're fighters. All of you guys are all fighters. We're scrappy. We figure it out. That's the one thing we always kind of look at and hold, and that's why the council really wanted to do a deeper dive, hold these more intimate workshops where we can have more of a back and forth than we can at a regular council meeting. We'll cover 5-10 minutes on it, but this gives us a much larger format to be able to have that back and forth. So hopefully as we get toward probably in February is sort of going to be our wrap-up meeting, where we're going to kind of talk about all the parts and pieces and look at all of it. We'll probably get down to a little more detail as to what it may truly take to operate the city as it is today, and how we may want to move it forward to the future. It may be council in the community to say, you know what, we really value paramedics and we want to have all full-time paramedics in a squad. And then that's something that we would then have to look at. Okay, how can we afford to do this, and what is the mechanism to get us to that point? Is really where council's trying to get to.
Carol, you had a comment?
I'm going to bounce this to Brian, but you did look, he's been on the council a long time. You did look at, a really long time. He looked at other, folding the fire department and trying to bring something in, and then he could tell you what happened to La Habra.
Well, we did, I mean, we did look at that many, many years ago, and we did go to LA County to see if we could get a reasonable cost structure out of LA County. And I don't even know how many years ago that was. It's probably 15 years ago now. It's been a long time ago. And I forget, I don't even remember who the chief was at the time I was working with, but it was, if I remember correctly, it was $4.1 million back then for LA County to take over La Habra Heights. And they don't just take it over. You sign off, you give them all your equipment. Everything goes to LA County, and once you start down that road, it's over. La Habra did it, and they got the pretty sweetheart deal at the time. They brought in LA County and contracted with LA County, and LA County took over everything there. And I forget how many years passed, maybe it was a 5-year contract or something. Well, it was like probably a year ago or 18 months ago or something, all of a sudden they had to close one of their stations down there to bring their costs down because the cost went up so dramatically after that. So it's, once you start down that road, it's all over. It's once you sign it over to LA County, maybe on the front end it might look pretty good, but I don't look for 6 months or 2 years or something. I look out all the way. And are we going to be sustainable, and is that a model that we really want and can afford type thing? And actually our cost for our department is really low when you compare it to Orange County or LA County or something else, because we train a lot of people here, and we've got a good management staff. Ed Martin's the chief and things, and we have our management team. But the troops we bring out of the academies and things, and we develop them, and they work hard, and a lot of them stay here for a period of time, some don't. And they move on to better jobs and better departments and things like that. And we provide a really good service to, the region by developing these people. So I think it's a good model. It's sort of a hybrid model, but we've looked at exactly what you talk about. We've put it out for bid, and it's just astronomical, the costs.
Yeah, question. Does the fire department budget include brush clearance?
What do you mean? Yes, it does.
Yeah, you mean the inspector?
No, I mean the brush clearance itself.
Oh, you mean when we have to go out and remediate? And no.
We do. We budget a component every year for brush clearance abatement costs. So in the budget, we do have a line item related to brush clearance abatements. So we have to go out and abate properties. There is key marked funds there for.
And that's not part of the property tax assessment?
Well, the way we funded the source is there's a line item in the expenditure side, and then the revenue side that comes in gets spread across all of the areas of the budgeting.
We're not enforcing abatement costs to individual residents then?
We do. So once fire department goes out and actually does the abatements of the properties, there are a couple of things happen. So you go through a pre-abatement notices, job walk with fire marshal and potential bidders for the landscape contractors to do the work. After the work is done, we pay the vendor, so we pay the contractor that does the work. We submit a bill to the property owner, and I have to give it up to Dawn. She's over here in the corner. We haven't talked much about Dawn today, but her and Chief Jorgensen, they send a notice to the property owner and says, this is the cost of the abatement. If you do not pay it by this time, it will go to the council as a protest hearing and we'll place a lien on the property. Then there are other, things that go along with placing the liens, clearing the liens. The county has their own cost for recording those things. It to show the difference of it, and it has had some pretty significant benefit to getting people to come in and pay before we go to liens. We haven't been have to lien properties as much, but we do. If they don't pay, then we'll take the property to lien, and then it'll get paid either through their regular property tax cycles, or if a property sells, then it'll come up in that sales portion of it, and it'll get paid through escrow.
Yeah, I think Rafferty, the question though, and I don't know that it got answered, was, so when we pay the contractor to do the work, does that come out of the general fund or the fire department's budget? When the city pays the contractor, what budget pays for that?
It comes out of the fire department budget.
Okay, so that is out of.
The other thing we should always remember about these liens on property, and we should never forget it, is we have very little turnover in this city. I mean, we're selling like 30 to 40 houses a year out of the 2,000 houses in the city. If there's liens sitting on houses, they're just going to sit there until the house turns over. And with low turnover, you're not going to bring that money back in. So it's a process that ultimately is an asset for us. If we had a balance sheet, it would be an asset on our balance sheet. But it's really not easily recoverable because people aren't turning over houses. So we're doing the right thing in that regard, but the point is, unless you bring that money and you can't convert it and put it into somebody's budget, it's just sitting there as a quote capital asset, even though we don't have a balance sheet in city accounting.
Thanks. So, yes.
Might not relate to today's meeting, and if so, that's okay. I just noticed there's a $500,000 difference between last year, or 23 and 24. Is that something that's explainable, or is that a not appropriate place to ask?
No, I think they explained it. I mean, there was some dollars that, go ahead, Rafferty, that we lost.
Well, we were receiving ARPA money, COVID money during that time, so it concluded last year in December, so we can't rely on that funding, and there were other grants as well in the previous years. In the previous years, we had the SAFER grant, which was about $300,000 per fiscal year.
And some of those years had some of those larger fires where there were strike team reimbursements.
So I know we're at noon. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. A few things I heard today that, Raf, I want us to look at immediately. Number one, none of our firefighters should have issues with uniforms or badges. Those are inconsequential things that, first time I'm hearing this, that concern me a lot. Our firefighters that come and work for us should be proud to work for us. And Rick, thank you for making sure that folks understood the role that both the Improvement Association and Los Compadres played with the Lucas machine. There's a lot of folks here that are very fortunate in life and where they're at today. And Monica, let's get the list and let's figure out how we can get some of these things there that impact the quality of life of our firefighters, but short term. Let's see what we can do as a city to make sure that if we need a uniform fund, if we need, to make sure they have a badge. Those are like basic. I mean, Richard, I've got to believe that's like a basic, and I see, Roy left, but I mean, we have a couple professional firefighters here. I've got to believe that that's just, most other departments, those are like things that just happen, right?
Yes and no. Auxiliary firefighters on most departments do not have a metal badge, they have a cloth badge.
Okay.
But usually a firefighter gets a badge upon being sworn in when they're employed.
So, I mean, I think that's something we should, those are some basic things that as a department we should have, right? So let's try to figure that out. Mike, thank you for the slough education, and others, thank you for helping us understand that issue. Let's maybe bring that up at council. Maybe I know we've got a pretty full agenda next week, but let's see if we can get that in there to give Ryan and others, and also work on when we put out the road notices, that we tell people, look, I think it's pretty legitimate ask. Your road's going to get paved. You're getting the benefit of the road in front of your house getting paved, which increases your property value. before the road gets paved, we're giving you notice to go fix this issue that we've identified. And if not, start allocating the cost. Just have them, each property, tell us how much it costs to clear the sloughage and allocate that cost to the property just like we do any other abatement procedure if they don't do it before we pave the road. I think that's a pretty, I mean, you threw out some numbers that were pretty, I mean, the numbers you threw out, I think, can make up that difference. And I don't know that I have a problem where the money comes from. If we're being successful enough in our general fund, you know, we can fix the department budget with the general fund money. I think I'm okay with that. If we can be more efficient in how we do roads, I mean, we should look at that. Although I would believe the roads money would probably go to paying the difference in what asphalt costs today versus what it cost yesterday. But I think that's something that we should definitely look at. And then Richard and Stephen, there are a couple items I probably will poke each of you on a little bit just to understand better. I know I didn't have enough time today to ask a lot of questions of you about some of the ideas that you had, but I definitely want to poke those. And being that Brian and I sit on the fire advisory group, you know, just make sure that we understand those ideas a little bit better. So I'll probably be reaching out in the next month or so to chat with you, definitely before we get to February and when we start making some of our final decisions. I'm going to open it up to my other council members and see if they have any comments.
You know, on the sloughage issue, I think, you know, it's the opportunity exists because one of the great costs on roads is bringing equipment into the city, right? We know it costs is a segment of every bid that's bringing the equipment here and staging it here and using it during the period of, and now we're doing $1.5 million, $1.5 million, $1.6 million, convert this next cycle is. It would be interesting to implement 4330 immediately and bring in a blade, a side blade, that would cut back the offending upslopes that are cutting in all the way back to the accepted width of our easement, our roads easement in the city. It would, if the city were to do that and give
get closer
notice,
to the mic, they can't hear you.
Oh, if the city were to do that, if the city were to have the contractor bring in a blade when we need to cut back the sloughage, cut the sloughage back, haul it off, put a separate price on that, you know, reassemble that portion of the bid, and notify the property owners that, you know, this is going to be a cost you're going to bear. Now, whether or not we have the political gumption to just do it is another question, I suspect. But logically, that makes sense. If people haven't been maintaining their property, and they aren't, because it's pretty dominant, been in the code a long time. So maybe the Roads Committee should, as you're working on this bid, sort of take a quick look at what that separate cost would be for not just hand grubbing and braiding, but blade it off, right? Just put a side blade on it and cut it down, have a dump truck, throw the debris in the dump truck, haul it off, and have that be a singular add-on price. It's at least worth considering, because I think you're right. I mean, if we have a code and it says you got to do this and you don't do it, well, shame on us. Pretty simple to me.
Brian, anything you'd like to add before we end? Anything you'd like to add before we end today?
No, I want to thank everybody for coming out. I thought today was actually a really good session. There was a lot of input from the audience and the participants here, and I think a lot of good information was transferred between the public and ourselves, and I listened very well, believe me, attentively to what everybody said. And I think we're all concerned about the exact same thing, and it's just a matter of keeping our community safe and maintaining it and doing the best we can with fiscally responsible.
Norm?
Again, I'd like everybody else, want to thank everybody for coming out, for your comments and your thoughts. Just because I've lived here for 60 some odd years doesn't mean I know everything about La Habra Heights. I'm still learning every day. A lot of your comments have given me a lot of things to think about. I've been working on ideas of my own. I think we're all agreed upon the idea we have to find more funding for our fire department. It's got to come from somewhere. The question is, how are we going to do it? I think it's obvious it's going to entail additional taxes, putting tax proposals before the city for our fire department, our roads. And the question is how to do that tax, and basically how to make it fair for everybody. I have some thoughts on that. I'll be reserving for later on. Thank you.
All right. Anything else, Carol?
You didn't even ask. I just would encourage you all to tell other residents, you can watch this session, and the prior road session was very informative about the costs and what we're dealing with. And see if you can get your neighbors, because if people in the Heights gets educated, though the purpose of this, as Rafferty and John said, is to get the community to decide how we're going to go forward. So I would suggest you go on the internet and they can watch the old roads meeting and they can watch this one.
There were some pretty interesting ideas floated by some folks today. I'd be, people feel one way or the other about them. I'd be interested in hearing that. We will have, like I said, a couple more of these, we'll call working sessions, and then we'll end with what I'll call the capstone session, which is really where we have to decide a path forward, because I think we're at that point of really needing to decide what the path forward will be for our roads, for our fire department, and for the other aspects of the city that really need a close look at. So, all right, thank you. I think you all know how to get in touch with me, so if anybody would like to chat about anything we discussed today or at the prior roads meeting, you're welcome to reach out to me, and I think the same goes for our other council members here. Our phone numbers and emails are in the Heights Life, so feel free to reach out if you have anything else that you'd like to discuss, and I'm probably going to reach out to a few of you independently to have a discussion about some of the ideas you brought forward today. So thank you. Meeting adjourned.